Greetings, and welcome to Strike Fighters 2 Vietnam. Today we'll be doing another shorts episode, flying the Douglas B-26K Counter Invader on a strike mission deep into Laos along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Today's date is the 1st of September, 1965. We'll be providing armed reconnaissance near the Phanom base 630, which is deep in the mountains of Laos. We'll be searching and destroying any targets of opportunity near the target area. Our call sign for today is Mamba, which will include 2 B-26K counter invaders. We'll be taking off at 5:21 in the evening, with a return time of estimated 6:46. This will put us squarely into the darkness of night, over the target, and then on the return trip, which will be fun. This will be the first night mission that we've done so far on this game. And let's take a look at today's map for our flight. We're starting down here at Vung Tau Air Base in South Vietnam. This is an Army air base about 34 miles southeast of the city of Saigon. We're going to be taking off, climbing to a cruise altitude of 10,000 feet as we proceed up over Cambodia here, and then continuing north into Laos. And this is all areas of the Ho Chi Minh Trail that are outside of Vietnam, and these are countries that we are technically not at war with. Here in the mountains of Laos, we'll be coming into this area here. This is our reconnaissance area. Once we've destroyed any targets, we'll proceed back south, back over Cambodia, coming over the Bien Hoa Air Base in South Vietnam, to then land at Vung Tau. Straight line distance between Vung Tau and our target is 280 miles. It's going to be about a 56-minute flight one way, so about 2-hour flight total. Here's our roster today. Here's First Lieutenant Billy Crenshaw in Mamba 1, Second Lieutenant Dan Shannon in Mamba 2. Now, to the loadout. We can see here we're in the paint scheme of the 609th Special Operations Squadron with the Shark Mouth. We're rocking some cluster bombs, frag rockets, napalms, and then 2 750-pound bombs with full 100% ammo for our 8 machine guns. Mamba 2 has essentially the same thing, except I have not given him rockets because the AI will concentrate on firing all rockets first before moving on to any bombs, so he's just got some extra 750s. And there we have it. That's the briefing for today. We're going to head out to the steel runway, and we'll see you out there. Alright, welcome to our B-26 Counter Invader here on the steel runway at Vung Tau.
Clear for takeoff. Contact departure.
And we get our lights on, landing lights. And there's the sunset out to the west. We'll be taking off to the north here. And as throttles come up, we're going to be looking for 110 rotation speed. 110 knots. And we just passed 60. There's 100. And 110. We start to rotate just as we pass the small, rickety control tower. There we go, positive rate of climb. Gear up, and we'll bring the flaps in as well. Now we're pretty heavy, so I'm gonna kind of level out a little bit here, get us some airspeed back up, and then we'll continue the climb. Now we're gonna get up to 10,000 feet because we'll be crossing over some pretty high mountain ranges once we get up north. You can see we've got a pretty good interior of the cockpit here in this aircraft. Tells us how many gun rounds we have left. All sorts of modern instrumentation. The only thing that sucks is this weird drawing of the helmeted navigator, which is then overlaid with the navigator from the interior of the aircraft. Somehow the interior and external models have overlapped and gives us this really funky extra person floating in midair. So I'm going to try not to look at him too much because it kind of takes away the immersion and realism. But that's what's going on if you see that. Continuing our climb up here, South Vietnam in the evening sun below us. Like I said, it's going to be about 280 miles to get to the target today. We're going to see a cruise speed of 300 knots, so it's going to be 56 minutes to reach there. On the way back, another 56 minutes, so it's going to be pretty late. About a 2-hour flight plus any loiter time over the target, so maybe 2.5 hours total for today. Oh, also another thing to note, even though this cockpit looks good, the navigation equipment does not work. There's some sort of bug, and none of the navigation stuff works properly. So I'll be making a lot of use of the map and also the heads-up display waypoint triangle. I'll be switching to that a lot. The B-26K Counter Invader was a World War II medium bomber produced by the Douglas Aircraft Company, not to be confused with the Martin-designed B-26 Marauder, another medium bomber that had come out 2 years earlier in 1940. When the Invader began life in July of 1942, it was designated the A-26 as an attack plane designed to replace Douglas's very successful A-20 Havoc. The A-26 came in several variants. The B version was fitted with what was known as the all-purpose nose, an enclosed nose that contained 6 or 8 50 caliber machine guns. The A-26C had a glass bombardier nose that was fitted with a Norden bomb sight for more standard bombing missions. The noses were designed to be able to be swapped in the field, thus changing the aircraft's mission. The aircraft had a crew of 3, a pilot, a navigator/bombardier, and a gunner. Very few A-26s actually had dual controls, making the right seat not a co-pilot at all, but a true navigator. This crew member had access to the nose section either for manning the bomb sight or for loading the nose guns, depending on which aircraft version was flying. The gunner sat behind the navigator, facing rear, and had remote control of 2 turrets, one top, one bottom, using a periscope gun sight and an analog computer to adjust for lead and parallax errors. This system was similar to the gunnery system on the B-29 Superfortress and was just as difficult to work the bugs out. The aiming system alone delayed production of the aircraft and was difficult to keep working once it was in the field. The A-26 fared very poorly in test runs in the Pacific. Crews didn't like the aircraft, claiming that the engine nacelles blocked the view of the ground and made it difficult to use as a ground attack aircraft. General George Kenney, commander of the Army Air Forces in the Pacific Theater, made the very unambiguous recommendation of the aircraft, quote, "We do not want the A-26 under any circumstances as a replacement for anything." However, whatever problems the Pacific pilots had with the plane were not unanimous. The 9th Air Force in Italy loved the A-26 and reported that it was happy to replace not only all of its A-20 Havocs with it, but also trade in its B-26 Marauders for the new plane. By 1945, the 9th Air Force had flown 11,567 missions, dropping 18,000 tons of bombs, recording 7 confirmed kills while losing 67 aircraft. The 12th Air Force also received A-26s in January of 1945 and used them as tank busters in the final months of the war in Italy. After the war, the Army Air Force officially was reformed into its own entity as the U.S. Air Force, and with this restructuring came a change in how aircraft were designated. All of the Martin B-26 Marauders were retired in 1947, so at this time, the A-26 was now redesignated as the B-26. The B-26 Invader saw extensive service again during the Korean War, flying from Japan and carrying out the first bombing missions of the war in June of 1950. The 452nd Bombardment Wing was an Air Force reserve unit of B-26s based in Long Beach, California, that was activated and sent to Korea by November of 1950, joining the 3rd Bombardment Group already attacking targets. When the 3rd Bombardment Wing's B-26 units completed their war tour in Korea, they had racked up a record that included the first and last bombing missions of the war. The squadron had flown 33,000 sorties, destroyed 31,000 vehicles, 337 locomotives, 3,000 boxcars, 116 bridges, 529 buildings, and had cut 918 roads and 841 rail lines. The arrival of the B-26s in Vietnam was very early, with unmarked invaders arriving at Udorn Air Base in Thailand under CIA control in 1961. A civil war had begun in Laos, and it was feared that a communist uprising would spread into Thailand. Thailand secretly offered 5 of its air bases near the Laos border to the US for use in reconnaissance and attack flights supporting the Royal Lao government. Under Operation Millpond, the secret CIA operation to bring air power into the Laotian Civil War, 16 B-26s, 16 Sikorsky H-34s, 4 C-130s, 3 DC-4s, and 1 DC-3 arrived at Udorn for use by Air America. In April of 1961, the B-26s were loaded with bombs and rockets and prepared for their first strike against communist forces in Laos. However, the Bay of Pigs fiasco happened on April 17th, and all B-26 bombing missions were cancelled as a result. The aircraft were held in reserve, with no attack sorties ever being flown. Only our B-26s flew missions over Laos, performing photo reconnaissance, and one was damaged by anti-aircraft fire. By August of 1961, Operation Millpond was cancelled, and all B-26s returned to Japan. However, some of these same Millpond invaders would soon return. The situation in Vietnam was heating up between the North and the South, and a recent blustery declaration from the Soviet Union had fanned the flames of the Cold War. Moscow had pledged support for communists, engaged in, quote, wars of national liberation. Khrushchev said that the Soviet Union would help the peoples striving for their independence through the overthrow of pro-Western governments in these brushfire wars. It was an open challenge to the West, and officials in Washington took it exactly that way. Operation Farmgate now formed, and the 4400th Crew Combat Training Group deployed to Bien Hoa Air Base in South Vietnam with T-28 Trojans, C-47 Skytrains, and 4 of the ex-Millpond B-26s. The aircraft were painted in VNAF colors, the South Vietnamese Air Force, and American crews wore plain jumpsuits with no identification. Their mission was to train South Vietnamese air crews to bolster them against Soviet-trained northern forces. In reality, very little training occurred, and most Farmgate missions involved airstrikes against Viet Cong forces throughout South Vietnam, often in cooperation with VNAF aircraft and forward air controllers. More invaders were slowly trickling into Bien Hoa Air Base, and now the squadron was up to 12 of the aircraft. The B-26s in Vietnam in 1962 were old, and were most certainly World War II and Korea veterans. This led to serious reliability problems, and crews had to work overtime to keep the aircraft flying. Even so, the B-26s only had a 54% serviceability rate. By July of 1963, it had become well known that the operation was an all-American unit, and the pretense of Farmgate being a classified operation was dropped. The 4400th Training Unit was reorganized into the 1st Air Commando Unit, which would continue flying missions until the end of the war in 1972. Unfortunately, time finally caught up with the squadron's old aircraft in 1964. The B-26's wing spars had fatigued beyond the breaking point, and 2 aircraft snapped wings off while pulling out of a dive. One had been in combat, and the other during a demonstration in Florida. All 13 remaining B-26s were grounded. The squadron's T-28s also had started suffering losses from structural failure, and these too were grounded, leaving the 1st Commandos with no actual combat aircraft to fly until A-1 Sky Raiders arrived in May of 1964 to replace both of the older aircraft. The majority of the Millpond and Farmgate B-26s were flown to the Philippines and were scrapped in 1964 and 1965. This was not the end of the aircraft's career in Vietnam, however, as the Air Force had contracted out to the On-Mark Engineering Company of Van Nuys, California, to overhaul 40 B-26s for counterinsurgency roles. This was the aircraft we are flying today, the B-26K Counter Invader. This overhaul gave the B-26 upgraded engines, propellers, modern avionics and brakes, and, most importantly, rebuilt all the wings and added wingtip fuel pods. At that time, the agreement with Thailand still specified that the US could not deploy bombers to their country, so as a workaround, the B-26K was redesignated yet again back to its old nomenclature and became the A-26A for deployment with the 609th Air Commando Squadron in Thailand in 1966. The revitalized B-26K was back in action, flying with the 609th out of Nakhon, Phanom Royal Thai Air Base. The aircraft flew night missions along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, using the concentrated firepower of their 8-gun noses to tear up trucks and their extensive bomb hardpoints to destroy roadways. The 609th Air Commando Squadron used the call sign Nimrod, and this soon became the squadron nickname. They used the identification code TA on their tails, which is what we see today on our aircraft since we are sporting the 609th Air Commando paint scheme. The squadron took heavy losses over the next 3 years, but at the end, B-26Ks had flown 7,159 combat missions, and had destroyed 4,300 enemy supply trucks. 30 counter-invaders had deployed to Thailand, and of those, 12 had been lost, for 40% casualties. The 609th was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for gallantry. Other squadrons flying AC-130 gunships took over the night interdiction missions. The 609th Air Commando Squadron was inactivated in December of 1969, and the B-26Ks, which had reached the limit of their safe flying time, were retired in 1969 and eventually scrapped. In all, 2,503 A-26s were built, and of those, 40 were rebuilt as B-26Ks. 6 of those aircraft still exist today. Alright, we can see just how hilly and mountainous the terrain is underneath us as we're flying over. You can see from our pressure altimeter that we are flying straight and level. And that radar altimeter is bouncing all around like crazy. So, radar altimeter uses radio waves bounced directly down underneath us to tell us exactly what our altitude above the ground level is, as compared to the pressure altimeter, which is telling us how high we are above sea level. So with that crazy little radar altimeter going nuts, we can see that there's very, very steep mountains and valleys down there that we're going over. Alright, we're coming into this valley, which is our assigned patrol point. We're going to keep our eyes peeled and start looking around in all these little valleys and peaks for any sort of... oh, hey! There we go. Look at that. We got a convoy of trucks right down there in the jungle. You can see all their headlights on. Let's head right over to that area and get ready for our attack. Alright, I'm going to cross their path perpendicular to them. Crossing the T, as the old naval maneuver was called. I'm going to fly past him and then tell Shannon to attack, and then hopefully get him lined up right down the perpendicular with the convoy, and then I'm going to flip around myself and then come in behind him, so that hopefully both of us will be dropping ordnance right down the line of the convoy, instead of trying to attack it at some weird angle. Just more destruction if you can get right down the line of it. There we can see this little Vietnamese truck full of dudes bringing troops and reinforcements down into South Vietnam. We're going to put a stop to that tonight. There's Shannon on my wing. Alright, Shannon, attack this convoy. You are weapons free, buddy. And I'm going to make this left turn to space us out a little bit, and then hopefully get us right down the line, like I said, perpendicular, or parallel with the convoy. And we're going to start with some napalm, opening ceremonies. Got some napalm. And let's see, there's a convoy just outside the canopy frame there. Let's see if Shannon makes a good hit on his first run. Nothing yet. We're lining up nicely. Is he gonna hit? Where's it gonna be? Oh, white phosphorus hit off to the side. Not even close. Well, we're gonna do good. Here we go. Bombs away. 2 napalm. Oh, direct hit. Right in the middle of that convoy. We just took out so many that the computer has considered the mission to be complete. We could pack up and go home right now if we wanted, but obviously we're not going to do that. I have a lot of ordnance to spend. We flew a long way to get out here, and I'm going to make the most of it. Speaking of making the most of it, I think we're going to swing around and we're going to unleash the power. Oh! We got some flak anti-air positions hidden in the jungle over here on this side of the convoy. Shit. Alright, we're going to make a note to not wander that far during these passes. We got to stay away from that. Anyways, let's use the machine guns. Or no, rockets. We're going to select rockets and use our high explosive frag rockets on this end of the convoy, which I can't quite see, but there are some lights there, so there we go. That must have done some damage. Through the smoke, treetop level. Napalm's still burning down in the jungles. And we're flying within feet overhead of that convoy. Guys probably shooting at us with AK-47s out the back of the truck. You have to watch out for ground fire. Obviously not in the game, but, you know, in real life. Let's roleplay a little bit. Where is Shannon's? Another miss with that white phosphorus from Shannon. Disappointed, buddy. You can do better. Alright, this time I want to make use of our 850 caliber machine guns. Tin can openers. We're gonna tear up some of these trucks here. There we go, coming right on target again, rolling out right down the line. Looks like 4 targets right here in the front. And opening fire. Oh, got a couple of jams, but that's okay. We got plenty more. Oh! 4 hits. Spray a little bit into the woods there for good measure. And we'll chink defensively against any ground fire possibly coming up at us. That sucks that we got a bunch of jams right out of the gate with our first rounds fired. It's very unfortunate. Probably had some negative G's on the airplane or something. And we're gonna hit them up with some with our 750 conventional bombs as we're coming over. Oh, Shannon just hit with some napalm somewhere. I think it was another miss. And here we are. Bombs away. Ooh, very, very close hit. I don't know if it actually did damage. There's the shockwave subsiding right next to the convoy. May have hit something. Alright, we're going to circle around again. We're going to dump our last 2 napalm. Get rid of those guys. There goes Shannon again. As we look over, you can see the flaming wrecks of the trucks we've already hit, as well as Shannon's napalm burning way out in the jungle, way off target. But there's some wrecks below me. Come back around. Now I don't know where he is. Where he's dropping that ordnance. Let's just hope that we're not going to get caught in a bomb blast as we come down. And there they go. Napalm away. Ah, I think it's going to be way in front of the... hard to tell. I think I missed all the trucks though, but they're going to have to drive through that or stop, so maybe that'll stop the convoy. Maybe there was a couple of trucks out front that I didn't see that I hit, but a little late on release that time around. That was my bad. Alright, cluster bombs coming up next. We saw the, oh, let's open those bomb bay doors. There's our cluster bombs ready to go. This is exciting. This is our first aircraft that we've used that actually has a bomb bay. Control O opens the bomb bay doors. I was just going to say that we can see the moon rising to the east, while the sun was just setting behind us to the west. Whoa, alright, Shannon has apparently dumped all of his ordnance, and now he's making use of his 8 50 cal machine guns to strafe those trucks. Which is awesome. Alright, getting lined up for our release, and there they go! Clusters away. Lots of hits. Or at least lots of explosions. I actually don't know if I got any hits. Sometimes it's really easy to see those trucks and their headlights. They kind of shine through the jungles. Other times they become obscured, and they're not so easy to see. Just keep turning, and I want to stay clear of Shannon, mostly because I don't know where he is or where he's coming from. We'll just circle back around and wait for him to clear. And that'll give us a chance to line up with the convoy again. Still, oh, there he is. Alright, so he's directly in front of us. We should clear him. Now it's our turn. See the brass just falling out in a waterfall underneath the nose of the aircraft. More hits on those trucks. Still a couple left, though. We're gonna have to keep swinging around a couple more times. Luckily, we've got thousands of rounds left, so I'm not worried about it. Oh, there's Shannon up to our right. We're going parallel. We'll see him coming in here in a second, I think. Where are you at, buddy? I don't know where the targets are. They're hidden in the... There we go. Guns from Shannon right to our right. Using the rest of our high frag rockets here. Oh, plastering the front of the convoy. Definitely at least one hit on the front truck, I believe. Maybe a couple more. That was really cool coming in and seeing the tracers right off the right side of the nose from Shannon. Looks like just a couple of trucks left and we're both down to guns. But, this aircraft means business when it comes to guns. Definitely a very scary business end. Gauging my bullet drop there, and there we go. Just one truck left, I think, skimming over the top of those trees, banking up and away to avoid ground fire. Shannon's coming in, probably on that last truck. I think it's just one left. Let's keep an eye out for him. Let's see how he does. Yep, it's just the one truck left. Looks like he missed. Come on, Shannon, you can do better than that. I can't really see them in the jungle. See, I can kind of see there's some headlights there. Well, let's just spray the trees. Oh shit! Oh, he's much further right than I thought. All right, well, let's just pull out of it. We'll circle back around. We got all the time in the world. These Pratt & Whitneys don't drink fuel like a jet engine does, so we have hours of loiter time on target if we wanted. Not worried about it. And here comes Shannon rolling in on the target once again. This is the final truck. This is your last chance, buddy. Can you do it? Oh, here they... Oh! Yes! Oh, and there he goes. Wrecked that last truck with a hail of bullets. Good job, Shannon. Rejoin, please.
Welcome. Returning to formation.
And that's it. We can just see a couple of puffs of smoke down there. We're going to head south and egress the area and head back into South Vietnam. Some more fires burning down there to my left. There's Shannon directly ahead of me coming. We're going to cross here in a second as he gets back on my wing. That was a little aggressive, don't you think? 4 fires down there. The burning carcasses of those ZIL trucks. And we got to make our way to this egress point. Like I said, the nav system in this plane doesn't work properly for whatever reason, so you can see none of the none of the arrows are pointed at anything useful. God knows what they're pointing at. So we're just gonna climb back up to 10,000 feet. We're at 8,500 now. So we'll get back up to cruise altitude, set for cruise speed. Let's jettison these rocket pods. We don't need those anymore. See you later. And got to use my heads-up display to cheat a little bit, find that navigation waypoint. There we go, full moon tonight. Just creeping up over that horizon a little bit higher than it was before. All right, well, that went really, really well. No damage to either aircraft. We destroyed a dozen or more trucks. Those are reinforcements that are not going to make it into the Mekong Delta or other areas of South Vietnam. So hopefully we saved a bunch of lives tonight by taking them. But that's the strange and perverse math of war, isn't it? We like to say that we have saved lives by taking them. That's how it goes, I guess. And like everything else on this instrument panel, looks like the fuel gauges are not working and are stuck at full. So that's good to know. Cannot track our fuel consumption, just like we can't navigate. Also, I'm pretty sure that the vertical speed indicator only goes to plus or minus 500 feet per minute. So that's nice also. This is a really fun and interesting aircraft to fly. Lots of really close ground support missions, but it's all these little details about the just the way the panel doesn't work and little quirks like that. That's what made me decide to not. It was not going to be good to do a full campaign with this plane, so the one-off mission seemed like a better use of it, to just do it once and get to talk about it and show it off, and then move on to something else that works a little bit better. At some point, I do want to do a Air Force campaign, and there's a lot of early war planes that I would like to get to. There's F-102s, F-106s, F-104s, all planes that were not really, that would be retired within a few years of the war starting. So I'm going to contrive a way to get my pilot to fly a bunch of those, and then move on to some of the more familiar things like the F-105s and I guess eventually F-4s. Can't get away from that plane in this war. There's not really anything I can do about it. Nakhon Phanom was a Royal Thai Air Base located in northeast Thailand. It's located in the mountains 106 miles due east of Udorn and is only 9 miles from the border of Laos. It was one of the 5 air bases loaned to the U.S. during the Laotian Civil War to fly support and reconnaissance missions against communist forces. Americans referred to the base as NKP, and it was a frontline U.S. Air Force base from 1961 through 1975. For the first month of American occupation, the base had no power, no living quarters, and no latrines. Because of the size of the base, only helicopters and propeller-driven aircraft operated from Nakhon Phanom. The 1st, 22nd, 602nd, 606th, and 609th Air Commando squadrons were the primary operators from the base. However, support squadrons, search and rescue, special operations, forward air controllers, recon squadrons, and Air America also called NKP home. Aircraft included B-26Ks, A-1 Sky Raiders, AC-119 gunships, C-123s, O-1s, O-2s, OV-10s, C-47s, C-130s, and even, for a short time, a Navy P-3 Orion from Observation Squadron 67 that was on secret intelligence gathering missions. NKP was one of the staging points for a large POW rescue mission in 1970. 90 prisoners were to be rescued from the Son Tay prison camp. However, the mission failed because the POWs had been moved months before. In 1975, the fall of South Vietnam ended the involvement of the U.S. in the region, and the Air Force began its withdrawal of men and equipment. The airbase was returned to Thai control on 1 October 1975. Today, the base is a Royal Thai Navy facility used to patrol the Mekong River and is jointly used as a civilian airport. Since the campaign has started us in 1965, a year before the 609th Commando Squadron deployed to NKP, the game has stationed us instead at Vung Tau in South Vietnam. Vung Tau was a logistics airbase 34 miles southeast of Saigon and was originally run by the Army. 32 CV-2 Caribou transport aircraft were assigned to the base. These Army aircraft were transferred to U.S. Air Force control in 1967 and were redesignated C-7s, though no physical changes were made to the aircraft. A squadron of OV-1 Mohawk recon aircraft also operated from the base. However, due to the popularity of Vung Tau as a recreation destination, transient aircraft of every type were seen passing through the base, including aircraft from Allied countries. The city of Vung Tau was featured in a 1969 Argosy magazine article as the pleasure capital of the world. It was the most popular in-country rest and recuperation, or R&R, locations in Vietnam. Beautiful and peaceful beaches distracted troops by day, and hundreds of bars and dance clubs did the same by night. The port at Vung Tau was a debarkation point for thousands of new GIs entering the country, and major Navy docks and repair facilities were nearby. In addition, large numbers of Australian and New Zealand troops were stationed there. It was rumored that even the Viet Cong snuck into the city to enjoy some time off. The estimated 100 bars in Vung Tau were mostly named after American towns, cities, or other familiar landmarks to help make the U.S. troops feel more at home. Dance clubs blared the latest rock songs, and many of the businesses were actually joint ventures between American and Vietnamese. The airbase at Vung Tau used its Caribou aircraft to shuttle troops on leave from their duty stations into the city, as sort of a R&R transport service. This place of passion and pleasure would eventually crumble into one of death and sorrow. As early as 1965, Vietnamese and American generals were eyeing Vung Tau as a possible evacuation route should it become necessary. U.S. troops left the country through the port after the Paris peace talks in 1973, leaving the same way they had come in. But in April 1975, during the fall of South Vietnam, tens of thousands of South Vietnamese tried to evacuate the country to avoid the communists. So many Vietnamese had been left behind by the helicopters of Operation Frequent Wind, and as the country fell apart around them, the panic drove them to try to escape any way they could. Fishing boats overloaded with people set sail from Vung Tau, some attempting to reach land elsewhere, and others hoping to reach the U.S. fleet. Some Vietnamese officers flew Vietnamese Huey helicopters out to the fleet, many without flight experience, crashing into flight decks or jumping out over the water to let the helicopter crash into the sea. Many of the refugee boats from Vung Tau sank, killing thousands. Others were intercepted and returned to port, or were turned away by the U.S. fleet. Anybody on boats that were forced back to land were arrested and served prison terms. Thousands of Vietnamese continued to attempt to escape the country through Vung Tau through the 1980s. Today, however, Vung Tau is once again a beach resort town, with sections catering to native Vietnamese tourism as well as foreigners. The town is noted for several large statues and art pieces, including a Rio de Janeiro-style giant Jesus built in 1974, which stands atop a small mountain at the south of the city. Alright, so some time has passed, and we can see a large friendly airfield coming up that we're going to pass right over. There's a bit of confusion here because, if you'll remember on our briefing maps, the game identifies this as Ben Hoa Air Base. This would be significant because that was the base of the first Air Commando squadron that we talked about earlier, and they would have been flying their unrefurbished B-26s out of there. However, Ben Hoa is actually located right on the eastern outskirts of Saigon. This airbase, based on its location, should actually be Phuong Duc. Phuong Duc was an army airfield that was home to 2 aviation companies that supported 5 battalions of infantry, 2 battalions of artillery, and Camp Torres, the home base of MACV-SOG. MACV-SOG stood for Military Assistance Command Studies and Observation Group. Studies and Observation is misleading because it was actually a highly classified special operations group consisting of personnel from all U.S. service branches. MACV performed covert, unconventional warfare inside enemy lines, and the base at Phung Duc provided easy access to cross the border into Cambodia. Phung Duc Air Base will come under attack 3 years from now during the Tet Offensive of 1968, and the airbase will be closed for several days as VC commandos lay siege to it. It eventually was captured by the North Vietnamese during their takeover of the country in 1975. Today, it's a civilian airport that services domestic flights by Jetstar Pacific Airlines, Vietjet Air, and Vietnam Airlines. Alright, right over there is our is Vung Tau. We can see the coastline. We're getting pretty close, and so over to our right, it's going to be Saigon. We're close enough now, we got to start our descent. We got to descend now 8,000 feet, 9,000 feet to get down to 1,000 feet for pattern altitude. Yeah, look at that VSI. I'm pretty sure that's broken. Yeah, there's Saigon. City over there over the nose. Look how far the nose is down. There's no way that we're only doing 500 feet per minute. No way. I don't believe you. Which is funny, right? Because in pilot training, what's the thing that they tell you all the time? Trust your instruments. And yet, not a single instrument in this plane freaking works. So, I don't trust anything. Luckily, we're not flying under instrument conditions, so... Oh, and there's a approach radar picking us up. Again, looking at Saigon over to the right there. Fly past it. Then swing around for Vung Tau Air Base. All right. So where is the air base? There it is. I see it over there, just over the cowling. Or in front of the cowling, I should say. There we go, I can see it off in the dark there, in the distance. Whoa, Shannon. That was a little close. Man, he is all over the place. That's all I need is to get collided by my wingmate like 10 miles away from the airport here. And I'm just going to ignore the waypoints at this point, since I can't really figure out where the hell they are. Anyways, looks like we're roughly parallel downwind. Oh, there's the lights popping into existence. Yep, look at that. We're right parallel with the runway heading. So, swing down over the ocean, and then we'll be coming in. We'll swing to the left, get lined up. We'll do an overhead 360. And then we'll brake to land. This little jut of land out here, that's the actual port and town of Vung Tau. Sticking out into the ocean. Paradise City. Not what it's actually called. Paradise City is the really scummy city from Star Trek V. So there you go. Star Trek reference for you. And looks like this is one of those occasions where the wingman has not taken it upon himself to get set up for landing, so that's cool. So we'll come over the airbase in formation, and then I'll actually give him the order manually to break off and land. So it's a bug that happens, but it's actually more fun because then you get to actually do sort of a real brake for landing, where you can tell the wingmen to go first and then you can do yours. Of course, they don't circle to land right away. They go way out back to the initial point and start the whole process. But the brake at least looks cool over the airport. And here we go. We're just north of 2,000 feet. I should come back down for 2,000. We'll be 1,000 feet above pattern altitude. I'm assuming that field elevation is probably sea level here. View from the tower as we're approaching with our nav lights on. Shannon off the wing. And here we go. Shannon, brake for landing. There he goes. A few seconds, and then we start our bank. Alright, we're going pretty fast, so I'm going to shed this airspeed so we can get our gear down and descend down to pattern altitude. And here comes the gear, and as it locks into place, the landing lights come on. There they are. And we're slow enough for flaps. So we're setting takeoff, or setting landing setting on those flaps. Landing lights illuminating the whole front of the aircraft. And checking over our shoulder, looking for 45 degrees off the end of the runway. We're right at 150 knots. There we go, there's the threshold. And we'll probably just keep it going and roll right into final. I don't want to get too slow. We're at 800 feet and rolling out right on the center line of the runway. 120 knots, that seems pretty good. I'm gonna pretend like I know what the stall speed on this plane is, but actually I don't. I'm just kind of guessing on this. It's somewhere around 100, right? We rotated at 110, so we'll just hold at 120, and then I'll just let it flare down onto the runway once we get there. 350 feet. Landing lights are illuminating the ground now. And crossing the threshold. And it says, radar altimeter says 10 feet. We'll just flare and let it touch down. Somewhere here. There we go. Good enough for government work, right? And I've cleaned up the airplane. We're just going to continue taxiing down to the end of the runway. There's no more taxi turn off, so we're just going to zoom on down and turn off. And then once we do that, we'll proceed to the debriefing. We'll see how we did. There's Lieutenant Shannon on final in the background there. You can see he's got his nav lights on now. So we'll clear the runway and make room for him, and here's our turn off. And there we go. Another happy landing. Nice destructive mission this time. And the clamshell canopy opens up. We'll see you down in the debriefing. Alright, let's take a look at today's work. Let's see how we did. We were supposed to provide armed reconnaissance near the PAVN base 630, which we did. We searched and destroyed targets. Flight time was 1 hour, 34 minutes, and 1 second. 19 primary targets were destroyed for an outstanding success. Score 2,900. First Lieutenant Billy the Kid Crenshaw is awarded the Silver Star. That's a big one. 1,400 rounds fired from my machine guns for 28 hits and 8 kills. That's really, really good. The 4 napalm I fired, I got 4 kills. Another 4 kills with the high explosive rockets, which is pretty damn good. 2 kills with the M117s, which is really surprising because I thought I missed with those guys. I did miss with the cluster bombs though. And Second Lieutenant Shannon didn't do jack shit except for that 1 hit on the final truck. I guess he redeemed himself. So there we have it. Super successful mission today. We're gonna hit accept here, and we're gonna be able to see Crenshaw's Silver Star commendation. And there we go. I'll let you read that on your own time. Thank you once again for coming with me and joining me with another Strike Fighters Shorts. Join me again next time for more adventures over Vietnam. And I hope you enjoyed this one, as usual, and found it nice and informative. We'll see you next time.